I think my juices flow all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know as much as I know.
Right now, we've been able to stuff the stuff.
The curse is broken. NC State fans, finally. Finally.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
I mean, that's a triple play.
The Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.
We're back for another edition of Law of the Wolf. I'm your host, Joe Giglio, joined this week by Scott Wood, which means we have college basketball to talk about. We have NC State men's basketball to talk about. We have a win to talk about. I'm gonna be honest with you, Scott. I am old. So 9 o'clock games are no longer in a live experience for me. So I want to explain how this happened yesterday. NC State was down 11 in the first half.
Sounds about right.
I watched about 3 minutes of the first half. I went to bed. I hit record on the DVR, fully expecting to wake up to see an NC State loss. Check my phone. See that NC State won 54-52 with a DJ Burns shot near the buzzer. And I was like, oh, okay. Sat down this morning. I watched the final 8 minutes of the basketball game. Have you ever watched ESPN Classic and you're like, now, are you sure this team is going to win? You ever watch the 86 World Series on ESPN Classic and be like, are we sure the Red Sox didn't come back and win this game? Like, I don't understand. How did this happen? 8 minutes left. State's again down 11. And I'm going, wait, what happened? Well, it was one of those games for me. But you're a youth. You stayed up, you watched it, and you called it, right?
I've got 2 kids, so I want to be clear. I do not want to stay up past 9 o'clock to start with, but I did. And my mom and my dad both went to the game, got them tickets right behind the bench. They're 2-0 at Notre Dame, by the way. Mm-hmm. Coach Watkins told me that. He's like, they got to come anytime.
Very famously, your pop's not reacting to a last second shot there.
That's probably also true. My mom texts me and she says, oh, this is rough. I said, don't worry. This was at 10:20. I literally have it in here. And I told her, I said, they'll find a way to win this game. Trust me. So listen, as ugly as it all was, they do what they do. You know, Notre Dame is, let's be clear, not a great team. They've played better since Coach Shrewsbury laid into them over the last 2 games.
But they did just beat Virginia on the same floor.
They did. I don't think Virginia's that good either.
Okay. I guess we'll find out on Saturday.
Well, we will. But with that being said, they started to turn them over towards the end. They still didn't shoot well, but they kept getting extra possessions with offensive rebounds, hustle plays, little things. So while 39 minutes and 50 seconds was miserable to watch, they still found a way to win. They got to 10 wins. They're 2-0 in the ACC on the road. Again, maybe not 2 great teams, but they're finding ways to win. They did the same thing against Boston College. They didn't play great,
right? But
they found a way to win.
I just want to go back and go through a little bit of this game because, again, I watched it knowing what the result was and kind of trying to piece together how it happened, right? So I mentioned I started watching, here are my notes. You ready? They're down 11 with 8 minutes to play in this game. And then I thought they were down 48-41 with about 4 minutes left. And then Jayden Taylor, I thought, hit a huge 3.
Yeah.
That was big time mentally to get that thing. It was 48-41. Now you bang a 3. It's 48-44. There's less than 3 minutes. And now you're going, okay, we can win the basketball game. And the thing I noted with 3 minutes left, here was the lineup. Taylor, Middlebrooks, Morcell, O'Connell, and Mo Diarra.
Yeah.
Diarra was kind of sort of almost playing like I know they were playing man, but it was almost like a one-man zone where he was at the top and he was pressuring the ball.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was by design or if it was just how the switches worked that he really ended up on the perimeter. And even Dan Bonner during the call was like, I'm not really sure why they're not driving right around Mo Diarra, but they couldn't.
Yeah.
But they couldn't. And you saw a key turnover that he caused late in this game, too, I thought was really big time for NC State. Unsung. You and I have talked a lot about how hard it is to have new parts every year and to get those new parts to buy in. Like, I'm sure you had conversations with Richard Howell at some point in your career, like, hey, man, I think it sucks that you have to set screens for me and rebound, but that's your job. My job is to make the threes.
Listen,
So-
I might have 90 assists on my career if I went and looked it up, but all of them are to Richard. So I want to be clear. Him setting such a good screen got
Right.
me open so many times that eventually his man's coming out. They see me running across, and Zoe would just throw it to him, or I could get it to him. So but that's basketball,
Right.
Like everybody, I tell everybody this.
You played 4 years with Rich is what I'm getting at. Like, it's hard to kind of get to that point where you're like, okay, this is my job. This is your job. I understand it.
And it's hard to buy in.
It
You
is.
got- especially in a limited time when a guy may only be here for a year, getting him to buy in, hey, this is what we need from you for that 1 year. But I think, again, I saw you mention it in a text, it was very ugly. And I think there's a lot of different ways you can go as a coach to maybe help it be less ugly. But I think, especially down the stretch in the end of the game, I think Kevin did the right things.
Mhm.
Like you mentioned, he went to a defensive lineup. You get DJ Burns out of there. And now all of a sudden you're getting
There-
stops.
The most of that comeback, if you will, was with that defensive lineup on the floor.
And think of role guys. I mean, O'Connell
Middlebrooks.
getting offensive rebounds, Middlebrooks getting Diarra getting offensive rebounds. I mean, Casey's in there, scrap. I think them getting all those offensive rebounds too, creating all those extra possessions, allowed them to have a chance ultimately at the end of the game.
And to shoot poorly and to still win.
Poorly is an understatement.
Well, but there are times where you have to figure out as a coach, like, okay, how are we going to win this basketball game?
Yeah.
Can't shoot. Right?
No, the nice part is neither did Notre Dame the last 10 minutes.
But they forced turnovers,
Yes.
which was big. NC State made their free throws, which had been a little bit of a problem in some earlier games that I had watched. So it's like, you don't have the 3-ball firing. You're not, hitting on all cylinders on offense. And even the big boy, DJ Burns, who we've talked about, there's a delicate balancing act there. Like, how do you maximize him as an offensive weapon and overcome some of his defensive deficiencies? I thought Kevin did that perfectly in this game. Now, it was a very half-court game.
Yeah.
So you can do a lot of that. It was a very slow-paced, very half-court game. So
Felt like a high school game.
It did. You could, with a shot clock, you can do some of that in a half-court game, the offense for defense.
Yeah.
But I thought the patience to keep DJ on ice as long as he did, understanding what Diarra and Middlebrooks were giving him.
Yeah.
Remember, we've talked about defensively their best lineup obviously includes Middlebrooks, and it does not include DJ Burns on the floor.
Yeah.
So the two plays that I thought really stood out to me, and obviously the last one we can talk about a little bit, but the number one play that stood out to me, number one, was the Taylor 3 to cut it from 41 to 48-44.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Mm-hmm.
To think about where they were from the 3-point line in this game and to bang that thing in the way that he did. We've talked a lot about you need a bus driver. And I feel like Jayden Taylor is emerging as NC State's bus driver. And I think that's important to have that, understanding your roles.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we need a basket here.
I also think he's the one guy that I would say has absolutely no fear to take the shot.
Older too.
A lot of guys, they don't really want the moment unless it kind of comes to them. He is kind of aggressive enough that where he's going to end. Like even the one he took that he threw over the backboard.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
Late,
a little bit much, but he has no
But he
fear
understood.
in taking that big shot. So
State was 3 of 17 from the 3-point line. So that shot was gigantic. Okay. Now the second one I really liked was the basket that tied it up. It was 52-50. And they go to their Iverson set. I don't know what they call it. You got the two bigs high. You got one guy on the wing. You got one guy running the baseline.
Yeah.
And obviously the guy with the ball. Normally that's a play for Jayden Taylor. He comes off the cut, right? And you're it's a set basically. And they've run that a lot this year. That's like their go-to set.
Mm-hmm.
So number one thing that impresses me, we need a basket. We have a set. This is what we practice. This is what we do. We're going to run our play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like that. With a wrinkle.
Mm-hmm.
Because DJ ends up leaking back to the post. They get it to him in the post. Notre Dame allergic to double teaming DJ Burns, apparently.
Only the last 40 seconds of the game.
Well, only the two possessions that mattered, right? So he gets to go one-on-one. He spins to the baseline, scores, and I'm going, okay. And then the final sequence of the game, you said to me, the foul. You didn't like the press. You didn't like the foul.
Nothing about it.
You didn't like any of that.
None of it.
But it's and even Dan Bonner and Westham, great to hear their voices on the call. They were like, I'm not sure they wanted to foul there with 8 seconds left. But it did remind me, and shouts to our friend Josh Goodson, who was like, man, it feels like 83. He was mocking the 54-52 final with a winning at the buzzer. But during that run, Valvano fouled a lot, either tied or with the lead in order to get the ball back because there was no shot clock. So there's different levels of strategy there. I think it was more of luck, the foul on the perimeter. I don't think Jayden Taylor was trying to foul.
I bet if
Jayden
Jayden Taylor, if we sat here and asked him right now, what was the free throw percentage of the guy you fouled? There's no way he would have known 58%. So they absolutely fouled the luckiest guy ever, who's probably never been in that position and dang near air balls. They go a clutch free throw.
They go 7 of 10 from the free throw line, and the 2 misses were the 2 most important ones in the final minute, where they missed the 2 front ends of the 1-on-1.
And it wasn't even close. It was terrible. It was terrible. But I think going back to the point, they don't, and I've been critical, maybe not on here, but moving DJ around more, getting him those action, the Iverson cut with a wrist screen, getting him to the block. Because you got to, at some point, you can't just let him stand there and think he's going to get good positioning. I think when you set some of those cross screens, it gets him better position. Then it also gives you the opportunity of Casey, who sets that cross screen, can come off another screen. It just gets you more action. But with that being said, I think it's hard to move DJ around because the more you're moving him, the tighter he gets. Then you lose a little bit on the offensive end. So I think there's a big piece to it. So I do like seeing, the defensive lineup, which I was going to say
there's the beauty of the substitution pattern.
DJ's resting, but it was that type of game. The whistle was blowing a lot. That you're able to get those substitutions in. Probably in a normal game that has a lot of flow, you can't really get to that. But that's where I think a little bit of kudos to Kevin. We'll give him the props.
No, I think it's a lot.
Being able to do that and saying, hey, let's go defensive lineup. Let's get DJ back in there. And I think that helped him a lot.
I thought he pushed all of the right buttons here. And the reason I think DJ is able to score those final 2 baskets is he was relatively fresh.
Yeah.
Because you're not asking him to make the comeback. Again, the pace was a big part of this. Half court's a big part of it. Notre Dame's inexperience is a big part of it. But I think ultimately, when you look at it, you think back to your own career. There are nights where you can't shoot. There's nights when Lorenzo's turning the ball over. There's nights where Rich has too many fouls. But you still have to figure out a way to try to win the basketball game, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's CJ Leslie. Maybe it's somebody else. You don't know.
Well, I will say the nice part, probably 90% of basketball players are wired to the point where you could have such a bad night, but as long as you're in the game, there's still hope. That next shot you're taking, dude, you forgot you missed 11 straight. So just having the ability to stay in the game and kind of, things ain't going well, you're not making shots, just to be there says a lot about the team.
All right. So we are here on Law of the Wolf. You are listening on the OG Media Company. Scott Wood, tell people about what you got going on. ScottWood15.com.
Yeah.
Gets you into some of your basketball rackets, gets you into some of your lending rackets. I like it.
Well, the one that makes me money on the lending side, we've talked about the rates coming back around. I challenge anybody that even if you're looking, in the next few months or 6 months out, have a conversation. We'd be more than happy to have the conversation start to, we can do some things that we don't have to necessarily pull credit and give you some rough numbers. So just start that conversation.
A little bit of a fact-finding mission before you can really start looking for things. Is what you're saying.
I mean, at least get an idea. So then when you get with your realtor, this is already laid out. A lot of people, they kind of go, it's, the way things are run with us, it's almost backwards. They go to the realtor first, and then they're coming to the lender, and the realtor has no idea if they're qualified for a home. So let's start doing it the right way. Reach out to your local lender. I'd be a good start. And then we can get them with the real estate agent and go from there.
All right. So you got ScottWood15.com. You got 765-609-0453. If you're watching here on the YouTube, so you can see the information, or Scott.Wood at northpoint with an E.com. And speaking of realtors, Hometown Realty, they got 6 locations from here to the coast. They have more than 250 agents. Scott Wood, in your basketball career, if somebody had that big of a staff and that much of an accomplishment, you'd be impressed by that. I am totally impressed by what they've done at Hometown Realty, and you could do the same. Go to myhtr.com. Doesn't get any easier. Buy, sell, calculate. And then, of course, you will have to close on that house at some point. You're going to need some help with that. That's where Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer. Josh is a big NC State fan, so you should support him. It's wh.lawyer. I mean, how do you not love the world's greatest URL? wh.lawyer. All right, before we get to NC State's game against Virginia on Saturday, they play 2 o'clock Saturday over at PNC Arena. Virginia comes in. You've mentioned that the Cavaliers may or may not be exactly running the hottest that they possibly could run. They're a weird team in my opinion. 11-3. They did hammer Louisville Wednesday, so they have that going for them. But before we get there,
Garner High School would probably hammer Louisville. Let's be clear.
Whoa. Before we get to the Cavaliers and my favorite coach in the history of the world, Tony Bennett, have I ever told you my Digger Phelps story?
I've not heard this
one of my favorites. So it's funny because I'm watching the game this morning and I see in the end zone now where the media used to be at Notre Dame is a DJ. So they have the media up in the top row now, which it's standard operating procedure, and that's not the point of this rant. In 2017, though, NC State went to Notre Dame. Actually, it was 16 because it wasn't Mark's last year. It was 16. NC State finished the regular season at Notre Dame. It was March 5th, 2016. Yeah. So Notre Dame's pretty good. Mike Bray, not quite them running as hot as they could, but that was Connaughton. That was a squad. Demetrius Jackson, Bonzi Colson, Stevie Vistoria. Connaughton was gone that year, but they had some guys, VJ Beacham. So they hammer State 89-75 in a game where Notre Dame's just running all their stuff. They're looking good. I'm like the only person there who's covering NC State. Sitting next to me is Digger Phelps, and sitting next the former Notre Dame longtime basketball coach. I don't think he was anywhere near your generation, but when I was growing up, he was Notre Dame's basketball coach.
I at least know who he is.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you're from Indiana. So Digger Phelps sitting next to me, ESPN personality, right? And he'd been retired by this point, even from ESPN. And his young grandson is sitting next to him. His grandson's probably 8 years old or in that general vicinity. He's in second, third grade. So I'm still working for the News and Observer. I have my computer out and I can't connect to our system to file my story. And it was in the first half, but at the time, you do like these running blogs and all this other stuff. So I am frustrated, and you know me when I get frustrated. There may be some words that are used that are probably
there's
not
an eight-year-old there, bud.
So I'm sitting here and I'm going. I couldn't tell this story on the radio. I think I've told a modified version of it, but I'll tell the real story now. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, fuck, this fucking thing won't. And I'm like, and I wasn't that loud because like the Notre Dame band is like over here and it's an arena. And again, they're hot. So they're playing well. There's a crowd there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
After the first timeout, it was like the under 8 timeout of the first half. And I've never met Digger Phelps before. I've never talked to him before. He looks over at me and he goes, "Excuse me." He goes, "I'm going to need you to watch your language. This is a holy house." The mother, he like points to something up in the, top of the dome. The sister mother is watching over us. And I'm like, "Oh." And he goes, "And besides, my grandson's right here." And I was like, "Oh," I said, "Coach, I'm sorry. I just can't get my computer to work." And he goes, "It's okay." He goes, "Besides, there's only one fucking person here who's allowed to swear, and that's me."
Oh my goodness.
Like,
that's pretty good.
He's like, "I'm just busting your balls, man." And I was like,
you know how bad you'd feel for a guy that's just saying, "Hey, they're watching. He's not in this house."
Right.
Like, oh gosh.
I was like, my Catholic upbringing, I was like, "Oh no." He's like, "I'm just busting you, man." He's
I can promise you, he's let it fly in that house many times.
He goes, "What do you think I would say to all these referees all these years?" I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I appreciate you though." So it was pretty funny.
He should have at least gave you the Wi-Fi code after that.
Oh man. But I don't miss those days. I certainly don't miss those days. All right. So Virginia comes on Saturday to PNC. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and it's interesting. Your career, you missed Virginia totally running hot. Now you got blasted there a couple times in one of the.
I never won at Virginia, if I'm thinking about it right.
Right. But I'm saying they were still on the come up. They weren't dominant when you were there. Like even in 12, when you were trying to get in.
Year.
Yeah,
I think that I specifically remember ACC tournament
in Atlanta.
Was it Atlanta?
Yes. Well, you beat them 2 years in a row.
I don't think it was Atlanta because
you beat them Atlanta and Greensboro.
It was my senior year.
That was Greensboro.
And me and Mark, I had a really good game. I think I just broke Rodney Monroe's 3-point record. And we're walking to the podium and they're coming out. And I think they were like legit a bubble team.
Yeah, you both were.
And I think when they lost that game, it was just like, and I remember Tony Bennett was nice as could be, came up and said, congratulations, yada, yada, yada. And it almost looked like they were in tears. And he was with Joe Harris. And Joe Harris like couldn't even look me in the eye at the time because they knew that their hopes were gone. But he's always been a really good coach. I enjoyed playing him just because that pack line defense, I mean, they keep it tight. I've always said if you can make shots against Virginia, you got a chance to win. But if they shoot 28%, it might be a long night for them.
It's an interesting point, though, because they are the kings of one of Mark Gottfried's favorite sayings, KYP, know your personnel. They would close out on you. Obviously, they wouldn't give you the same looks that they would, say, even Zoe.
Agreed.
Where they're like, hey, you want to try to make a difficult shot? Congratulations. Go make a difficult shot from a spot that we're willing to give you a difficult shot from.
Well, and I think they do a good job from a scouting perspective, but they are 100% trying to take away the easy ones.
Yeah.
Their priority is easy ones. So I always felt that, around, especially the arc and taking some of those pull-up jumpers and threes, if you guys get on some type of roll, it puts them in a tough spot because their whole
7 threes in that game.
Priority is to take away the easy ones.
75-56 Wolfpack in Greensboro. 7 threes you made in that game. 23 points.
Probably
the
most I've ever had.
I think we had the Scott Wood rule of 4 in that one.
Yeah.
I think we.
If Roy's watching, screw you for listening to Joe on the rule of 4.
I do not remember CJ Leslie taking 17 shots in that game. What?
Oh, I don't think it mattered. It was we handled him.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have taken 25. It probably wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah. Virginia has changed, though. I feel like he developed players. He recruited players. They were able to stay in the system. They learned, their offense isn't easy to learn. Their defense isn't easy to learn. And you almost have to brainwash yourself into thinking we're going to win these, snail games of chess. If you haven't been there since the end of your career, they celebrate shot clock violations there like they won the national championship. Like it's a very odd culture of basketball that they have.
Yeah.
They've convinced themselves no, you're the asshole for not liking Virginia basketball in the way that we play. And Lauren Brownlow and I often argue and bristle. I bristle because she's like, it's when they play the right way, when they had Joe Harris and the pros that they had. It was like, okay.
Yeah, that makes
it a lot
easier.
When they play the shitty way, where it's like, okay, let me just throw something up with 2 seconds on the shot clock. And what are we doing?
I'd also say they are elite at development and growing players.
They used to be, and that's where I'm wondering the problems now.
The portal has killed them because, in my opinion, now these kids can get out a lot easier than what they could in the past, as opposed to, you may sit there your freshman year, not get a lot of minutes, and we're growing you. Your sophomore year, you get better. And then they see the growth. The kids after the freshman year, if they don't, get the minutes that they want, they're gone. So it's hard. They're not seeing guys that are there for 3-4 years anymore.
Especially their 4s and 5s. They used to get no frills, and Akeel Mitchell. And by the end of that guy's career, you were like, oh, damn. He's really good because he's been there for 4 or 5 years, knows what they're doing, fits exactly what they want to do. I feel like they've lost a lot of that basically since the championship team. I know the world's been weird.
Yeah.
Since the pandemic, the world's been weird, but I feel like they've been affected potentially more than any other. I mean, them and Notre Dame. Notre Dame used to be. Virginia and Notre Dame for a long time were the two programs that had the fewest transfers.
Yeah. And I think that's a big piece to it.
And
We talk about like Wake and even State just getting the portal right, bringing in the right guys. I think they are still struggling at it because that has never been their way.
That's not how he wants to do it.
And so I think he's always going to have a hard time fighting the battle, thinking that the day and age of a kid going to stay there for 4 years is probably gone.
What do you now? I look at State's schedule here in the ACC play. You mentioned they're 2-0. Boston College on the road, fine. Notre Dame, the way that they won the game, I think can give them confidence, which is important. I look at their schedule though, and I go, okay, the games against Virginia, the games against Carolina, big win from Miami last night against Clemson. That was helpful for the league. You can't have like people pull away. You can't have like Clemson and Carolina pull away and devalue those other.
Carolina might pull away though.
They could. Now they'll see Carolina next week, but those are the games: Virginia, Clemson, Carolina, Duke. Wake's gonna have a chance at it too. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna have to beat teams. Like last year, they beat the teams who made the tournament. That's why NC State got in last year. They beat Miami. Carolina didn't.
Yeah, and
they beat Duke. Carolina didn't. So for people like, oh, why didn't State get in? And Clemson didn't last year either. The only team they beat that got in was State.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how they really value the ACC, because I actually think as a whole, they are better than what a lot of people are going to give them credit for. And I got a weird feeling we're going to get into this season. And like you said, no one's really going to pull away. I think Carolina's really good. I mean, Duke's going to figure it out at some point.
Duke's getting better.
You got Clemson there. I just think everybody's going to beat everybody up. And it's going to be one of those where somebody wins the ACC with 4 or 5 losses or something weird. And it's going to be very balanced. So I'm going to be interested to see at the end of the year.
Miami went 15-5 last year and technically won the league.
And that's the thing. So are they still going to get 5 teams in with that? I just feel like, and they even said it on the air the other night, I just don't feel like anybody's talking about the ACC basketball, but I think it's honestly a better conference than a few of the other ones that, a Big Ten outside of Purdue. I mean, who are we talking about in the Big Ten? I can't think of anybody.
I've watched a few and I'm just like,
so
Nebraska's good because what's his name?
And I've always said that even back when I played, it's just, I think it makes you so much better because you're playing a very steady conference schedule. Everybody's pretty good.
Yeah.
There's really no bad losses outside of Louisville. So it's going to be interesting to see at the end of the year if it's a very balanced, 1 through 7. How are they going to value that?
I also don't see a Final Four team though. I mean, Carolina could get there.
I think Carolina's got the potential. I think Duke's got potential.
I actually think Clemson.
Oh my gosh, it's Clemson.
They need to play defense as they did. Isn't that weird for you to even hear? It's weird for me to say that they need to play defense.
I hope at this point they make the Final Four. But I do. I think they got a lot of solid teams. But heck, they say it every year. Every year we get to the tournament and then there's these 2 or 3 teams in there, and all of a sudden we've got 2 or 3 in the Elite 8, and they're like, "Oh, the ACC is no good. Why do we have 3 teams still in an Elite 8?" They just find a way to do it. It's a basketball conference.
All right, I want to expand on that point here in a second, but important that you support the people who support us. Breeze Through. 17 locations in the state of North Carolina. You need coffee? They got it. You need gas? Of course, they've got it. You need alcoholic beverages? They've got that too. And snacks, all of the great stuff over at Breeze Through. Go check them out. Obviously, right there. If you're going to the game on Saturday, you will see the Breeze Through right there on Trinity and Edwards Mill. So go check them out. Breeze Through, they've got you covered wherever you go. And the OG is Hayes Lancaster, Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. There ain't nothing without Hayes. So that's our guy. And if you have bug issues like, Tony Ann seeing a cockroach, go to bugsbite.com. You save yourself some money, get those bugs out of your house. I now have mice in my garage, which I've had addressed in the attic, but not the garage. So I do need to get on the Pest Authority horn there and get my guys over at bugsbite.com. And if you use the promo code OG23, you can get yourself some great NC State swag at Homefield Apparel. It's homefieldapparel.com. Again, use the promo code 23, save yourself 15%. Saw a great social media post during the holiday, people getting that bomber jacket. The bomber jacket really is a big win. It's got the slobbering wolf. It's on your hat right there. So go check them out. It's at homefieldapparel.com. You were saying there before our break about, I was curious the way that college basketball has changed when you watch these games and you realize Virginia doesn't have a guy for 3 and 4 years anymore. Mike Bray is not at Notre Dame anymore. NC State's best players like from Butler and Winthrop.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I was thinking about this. Your era was kind of the end of this and you had transfers and right after you State did well. Mark did well with Trevor Lacey and Ralston Turner, and they had to sit out a year. But it's like, I feel like, and you look at the tournament now, like last year, Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, like, huh? You know, FDU beating Purdue. Like, I'm watching this college basketball season and Marquette and Creighton. I watch some of the Big East games and I hear them talking about Purdue and how Purdue is probably the best team in the country. And I'm like, I don't believe it. I'm not going to believe it until they do something in the tournament. Right. So it's like, and then I was looking at the ESPN list of the top 25 NBA prospects. I think 12 of them in the top 20 don't play college basketball at all.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's so different. A, you have guys, the top guys not playing at all. B, you have guys changing all over the place. So it's the older teams that are the ones that win.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily stay together or play together.
Yeah.
So it's just so hard. Like if I would have said to you in 2011, someone's going to transfer from Radford and lead the ACC in scoring, you'd have been like, sure, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree.
But the dynamic that, like, you have to wrap your brain around, like, there's a lot of good college basketball players out there. It doesn't matter where they start. It's where they are now.
Yeah. And I think I kind of took the philosophy when they first started coming out with the portal is, I think you're going to see a lot of smaller teams like an FAU, you mentioned San Diego State. I think they're going to creep.
Tough guards, man.
I think they're going to creep on some big time teams because I think they may miss on the portal. I also think if some of these younger some of these like smaller schools still value the development, I think they can kind of slide away and get away with, growing some players. But again, will the players stay loyal and get picked off? That's another story. But they're going to get guys in there that just may not have meshed at a school, and they come in, and I think slowly they're just going to creep. Now, not all of them. I still think you're going to be very top heavy. Kentucky's still going to get the cream of the crop, and Kansas is going to get the cream of the crop. But I think you're going to see some of these programs, because they hit on the right spots and because they're still developing and growing and getting high school kids. Because let's be clear, high school kids aren't getting recruited the same way they used to. I say it to my AU team now. Mm-hmm. Back when I was playing, I probably had, 8 offers, 9 offers, 10 offers at this time. If I was playing nowadays, I might have 1 or 2. It's just changed. They're not.
Which year?
Like 2008 when I was getting
recruited. Like junior year, senior year?
My junior year.
Yeah.
So I just think the recruiting is just different now.
Well, we're still 2 years away from the COVID eligibility year being gone. I think that will change the dynamic too once we get there. But
you got 6-year guys, so
right.
Freshmen
and wouldn't you rather have a 6-year point guard than a first-year point guard?
I would, but I also think college coaches still have to try to value and develop kids. But again, I think the mindset is,
but how
they can take the easy way out. And I think that's, you got to find the kids that are just they're going to bring their lunch pail to work. They're going to work and they're going to understand, hey man, I might have to pay some of my dues. But again, there's how many of those have that old school mentality still? I just don't think it's out there. Peyton Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's really, really hard.
I agree.
Because,
but
that's the old dynamic. I mean, we'll see who ends up winning these things. I mean, UConn, they won the thing last year, but they had an ECU transfer.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to me to see the number of kids from Charlotte who are transferred like all over the country. One of the fascinating stories to me is like Stanford and Northwestern are 2 pretty good basketball teams. because they don't play the NIL game. Like all of their starters are somewhere else, and yet here they both of those teams have had interesting results so far this season.
And I think there's ways you can do it with NIL not being a main centerpiece. But now with
stop.
No, I think I really do.
Well,
I think you got to be in the game.
FAU was there.
I think you
not
got
like they're paying anybody.
I think you got to be in the game. But what you also have to understand is once that kid breaks out and has a good season, if you're not stepping up and being in the game, you're not going to have them. Because someone's going to be in his ear and they're going to be like, oh, yeah, 250,000 over here. Come on down.
Why would they have a New York accent?
I don't know.
Where did that come from?
I thought it was more Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, I'm going that route.
All right, give me one way NC State beats Virginia on Saturday over at PNC, because it does feel like they need this one.
Make shots. I mean, score more than the other team.
Okay.
It's pretty simple. I think if they shoot decent from three, it'll open up some things. I think, they're notorious for sending help over to DJ. So DJ,
yeah, I was gonna say DJ is going to be doubled in this game.
and I think for 39 minutes and 50 seconds of the Notre Dame game, they double teamed. DJ struggled in the first half of getting the ball out of there, but if he makes the right plays and the right passes, they have to make shots. A Michael O'Connell's gonna have to make a shot on the wing. So if they're able to do that, I think they'll be okay. If they struggle to handle that, then it could be a long night.
All right. Well, I say Casey Morcell is due for a big game, and when you play your old team,
yeah,
at least in the pros, you usually like to pay those guys back. So I'll have my eye on Casey this week. Appreciate everyone who has subscribed. If you haven't already, right there, hit the button there on the YouTubes, Apple, Spotify, the Googles, you name it. And of course, if you need some lending help, Scott Wood, scottwood15.com or scott.wood at northpoint with an E.com. We'll see you guys next week. Another big week of NC State basketball. A little NC State and North Carolina get together next Wednesday. So join us. We'll be back on Tuesday next week. Tuesday, right here for another edition of Law of the Wolf.
Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.